see lachem bracha, adli yedai, adli yedai, adli yedai, adli yedai, 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 yedai. We're gonna see lachem bracha, adli yedai, adli yedai, adli yedai, adli yedai, 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 yedai. Miyam v'tsheyim l'osef soysechem, miyelon v'dai, dai, dai. Miyam v'tsheyim l'osef soysechem, miyelon v'dai, dai, dai. Dididididai, didididai, didididai, didididai,
Bruchim Haboim, and welcome to the Verbringen, the Yom Hilula of the Frierdiker Rebbe, and now marking 75 years of our Rebbe's Nesias. We are being hosted this evening by Lubavitch of Remsen Village in their newly purchased building at 305 Remsen Avenue, and we are also going live throughout the world with Chabad.org. Tonight's program, as you can see behind us, the call of the hour, is being sponsored and brought to you by Release Time Hour of Greater New York, Mitzvah Shah. And tonight, I am, for those who don't know who I am, I'm Levi Hecht, and I have the schus to be the MC. In 1964, a little 8-year-old girl by the name of Sharon attended public school at 158 in Brownsville, New York. On Wednesdays, she attended a release time program. And week after week, her release time teacher told her the importance that the mother should light Shabbos candles. Amongst the other things that they taught the children, Shema, Torah Tziva, about the Yom Tovim, about keeping Shabbos, this teacher, instructor of release time, stressed very much the idea that they should go home and they should tell their parents, their mother, to light a Shabbos candle. Little Sharon came home week after week, and she asked her mother to please light a candle. And Sharon's mother said, no, that was for the old country, and we don't have to do that. It's nice that your teacher is teaching you that, but in reality, we don't do those things. So one Friday night, Mommy wasn't home, and little Sharon decided, I'm going to do it. She went to the local grocery store, and she asked the man running there, he said, can you give me, please, a holy candle? He looked at this little girl, and she didn't understand, what kind of candle do you need? He said, I need a special candle. And he thought, he said, I know what you mean. And he went to the shelf, and he took a yard-side lump, took a Yarmi's Current candle, and he gave it to the little girl, and she was so proud of herself. She came home, and she sat it down in the middle of the table, and she lit the candle. And she even made the bracha that her teacher told her to say. About an hour or so later, her mother came home, and she noticed the candle on the table. She was shocked. She said, what happened? Why is this candle burning on the table? She said, Mom, I decided that if you are not going to light a candle for me, I am going to light a candle for you. That was in 1964. Many of us who are here tonight, and many of us who are watching this via the internet, have been themselves teachers of release time. And each and every one of you have a story that you could tell us over and over, year after year, and the stories that inspired little small children to go to yeshiva, little children to learn what it means to have a yontif, to have a Shabbos, kashrus, and so on. So tonight, in the background of the Verbringen that we're having for Yud Shvat, we're asking everyone who's watching us to do a little finger walking to your computer and sign on to jewishhour.org, and please make a contribution to keep alive the Rebbe's dream of Mitvach Shah. Mitvach Shah, the Rebbe had stressed so many different times in so many different ways, and I would go on and tell you about it, but I only have a short amount of time to speak here. And we have been honored tonight to bring two special guests to Verbring for us. So I'm going to try to get directly to that part. Baruch Hashem, the snow eased a little bit, and those who had to travel to come here tonight, Baruch Hashem, were able to make it. Some from a little closer, some from a little farther. So Baruch Hashem, we were already going to plan B, that in case they didn't show up, we'd have to do it via Zoom and so on. But the Eibishter helped, and Baruch Hashem, we were able to get everybody here. So we begin this evening with Rabbi Shochat. And when I think of Rabbi Shochat, I think to myself of the story I once heard of him when he was just a young boy, and in Yiddishkeit the Rebbe, he had that great schus that the Rebbe rested his hands and gave him the brachas kohanim. And I'm sure that those brachas are there to help him day in, day out in his great work that he does back at home and for Yiddishkeit in general. So without any further ado, we'd like to call to the mic Rabbi Yitzchak Shochat of the Mill Hill Synagogue of London, England, to begin tonight's program. Please give me your utmost attention.
Can I give you that? L'chaim. Taka, quite a few miniyos v'ikuvim. It was an interesting challenge, resulting in a number of different stops to finally get here. But as I was saying before, each stop was part of Hashgacha Pratis for whatever the reasons that needed to be. And for me to be here tonight, I have to say, is on the one hand, a certain schus, and at the same time, maybe a little bit daunting and intimidating. A schus because I had the unique privilege of working with NCFJE for a couple of years while I was living in Crown Heights at the beginning of when I came to 770 back in Tufshim Mem Zayin and running the summer camp, etc. And also a little bit daunting because I'm here with Rabbi Shapiro tonight. Rabbi Shapiro, who was my Rosh Yeshiva when I was on Shlichus in Tufshin Mem Daled Mem Hey in Miami. Nevertheless, it's amazing to be here to be joined with what is essentially an amazing program, the release time program, which I was also involved with when I was learning in 770, and to be able to contribute in my own way by being part of this Farbrengen is especially meaningful. And the first thing to consider is the concept of this being a Yom Hilula of the Frierdiker Rebbe. What is the significance of a Yom Hilula? Why do we celebrate a yahrzeit? On a basic level, as per what the Rebbe explains in the Mishnah, al karcha chatachai, al karcha chatameis, it's a contradiction in terms. You're born against your will, and you die against your will. Mamanavshach. If you're born against your will, it means you don't want to be here. So why are you dying against your will? And if you die against your will, it means that you do want to be here. So why are you being born against your will? And the way the Rebbe explains it is, in the first instance, the neshama looks down here into the world, and it reflects on the challenges and the miniyos and the yikuvim and all that is going to have to go through in an actual guf. And it doesn't want to come here. Upstairs, it's basking in the glory of the Shechina, of the Kisei HaKavod. So, al korcha chatachai. Once the neshama comes into the world, however, it is able now to realize that it's going on to accomplish things that it would otherwise not be able to achieve, to a point where it'll ultimately elevate itself higher than even where it was prior to its initial descent. And therefore, it doesn't want to leave. It wants to keep doing, it wants to keep accomplishing, and therefore, al korcha chatzames. So that's the reality. Every single time on a yahrzeit, every single year thereafter, the same thing happens. There is this greater aliyas hanashama. Pesach, as we know, isn't just merely a zecher, a mere commemoration of an event that happened over 3,300 years ago, but the certain hashpais and the giluyim, as they happened in the original Pesach, happen every single year on Pesach. And so it is with a yahrzeit. On the very first year, when there is the actual histalkus, there is an aliyas hanashama, and every single year thereafter, the neshama goes yet higher and yet higher. And to be sure, the higher the neshama goes, it's not that it therefore becomes more detached from this world or from the loved ones in this world. Inasmuch as the neshama was intrinsically connected with its loved ones here in this world, then that connection, that remains eternal. That connection remains ongoing. And the higher the neshama therefore ascends, the more it can achieve for the sake of its loved ones here in this world. Hasidim are the undeniable loved ones of the Rebbe, of the Frierdiker Rebbe. The connection therefore remains eminently intact. And on the yahrzeit itself, as the neshama undergoes yet another aliyah, there is yet a deeper intensification and a connection. And with so much more, therefore, being done on our behalf. And if the primary objective of the Frierdiker Rebbe was the bringing and the coming of Mashiach, La'alta l'tshuva, la'alta l'geula, then on Yud Shvat, we have intensified koiches and brachos to be able to further achieve that objective. But let's go one step further. Why is it actually called a hilula? Hilula means by definition a chasana. What does that have to do with a yahrzeit? Why, in fact, are we celebrating a yahrzeit? So the Gemara famously tells us, "Chatay v'chol, chatay v'shasei, hurry up and eat, hurry up and drink," because life essentially is demul shasiyah. It's a banquet. A banquet. At a wedding, you actually have a banquet. What does that have to do with a yahrzeit? So first of all, what does it mean, hurry up and eat, hurry up and drink? Rashi says, hurry up, get everything out of the way as quick as you can. A banquet is here today, gone tomorrow. A wedding happens one night, and it's over the next day. So chaperein, because after tomorrow, it's all over. The Meiri goes on to explain it. Chaparayim, the Gashmias, get all the quick materialism, the Achila and the Shsia completely out of the way as quick as possible so you have more time to do Torah and mitzvahs. Again, because life is a banquet. Life is like a wedding. Life is over before you know it, and therefore you have to Chaparayim as much as you can. Either way, as the way Rashi explains or the Meiri explains, it has a negative connotation. Chassidus puts an altogether different perspective on this. Let's consider, again, a Hilula is a wedding at which a big banquet and a big feast takes place. What is a wedding? It's the coming together of a man and a woman. Naturally, emotionally, psychologically, it makes no sense. Man and women are diametric opposites. How do two diverse personalities with their own distinct characteristics, idiosyncrasies, and different neshamas, how do they manage to coexist? It necessitates something greater than both, something deeper, something that transcends either to be able to bring them together. Shchina shruya beinehem. Something greater than both of them to enable them to become one. And that's the same reality with regard to anything that conflicts. Oisa shalom bimraimov, hu yasa shalom aleinu. What's bimraimov? Up above, there's midas hachesed and there's midas hadin, and they could not normally coexist if not for the fact that the Eibishter himself, who transcends both, Oisa shalom bimraimov, hu yasa shalom aleinu. Makas b'chayres had to dafka happen bachatzos halaylo. Why? Because Elu evdei avodah zara ve'elu evdei avodah zara. So in reality, the mashchis had to, on the one hand, they had to be chesed to spare Klal Yisrael, gvura and din to take the necessary action against the Mitzrayim. The first part of the night is dafka gvura. Second part of the night is dafka chesed. So bachatzos halayla, that one moment at the crack of midnight, it's a moment that transcends both chesed and gvura to enable both things to happen at the actual same time. And that's the way it is in the context of marriage, of a hilula. We are opposites, and it's the shchina shruya b'neihem that exists within the fabric of every single relationship that enables the binyan adayad. And it is precisely because of that reality, that shchina shruya b'neihem, which enables both partners the very real ability to bring Yiddishkeit literally into this world, to bring yet another neshama into this world, which is a unique gift that the Eibishter gave, dafke, because he is Shechem B'Seichem. And as that applies in the context of couples, of marriage, it applies no less in the context of every single individual. It's the same reality. We are a neshama in a guf. The neshama is a chelek eleka. The guf is something physical and corporal. And really, again, the two shouldn't coexist if not for the fact that it takes something, the very real presence of the Eibishter in our lives, to enable both guf and neshama to merge as one. Enabling us also, as individuals, to produce offspring, namely the mitzvahs that we do. Peiros elu ha-mitzvahs. These are the mitzvahs that we do. Thus says the Gemara, life is a banquet, and the Yartzeit is a hilula, not because a banquet is quick and then it's over, and so too with life, but because at a wedding banquet, at a hilula, where two opposites, a husband and a wife, come together through the presence of the Eibishter, that's the reality of our individual lives as well, where the two opposites, the guf and the neshama, come together through the presence of the Eibishter in our lives, enabling that fusion to happen. Say, hurry up, take advantage of the situation, produce as many peiros, as many spiritual offspring as you can, do as many mitzvahs, impact as many neshamas, transform as many people. And that's why we refer to a Yartzeit as a hilula. Because when is the uniqueness of the guf and neshama merger most obvious? When do we really realize the impact of this unique reality? At the time of the histalkus, when the neshama leaves the body and has its aliyah, as we said up above, and everything returns to its natural state. They'll offer tashuv. On the day of a person's passing, of histalkus, all their life efforts, all of their life's accomplishments reach culmination and come into full focus. And when we talk about a Rebbe, when it's the Hilula of the Frierdiker Rebbe, and Hanasi Hu Hakol, we pause to think about the great Hilula, the great wedding, as it were, that took place when the Frierdiker Rebbe came into this world and into the lives of Klal Yisrael. We come together on a night like tonight, and we take in what that means, how we set the tone for the world, and how thereafter, when it came from after the Frierdiker Rebbe to the Rebbe, and how that set the tone for all of society and all of civilization. We remember how Moshe Rabbeinu himself only became the Nasi Adar after he married Tzipora. And it was on account of the Frierdiker Rebbe, and by extension, therefore, the Rebbetzin, that despite the Rebbe's initial reluctance to assume the Nesius, it was the Rebbetzin who, notwithstanding the great personal Mesiris Nefesh it would entail, prevailed upon him to take on the Nesius as well. And we continue dancing and celebrating this Hilula, this wedding, by continuing the Avodah. And we continue to produce Peiros by impacting yet another neshama, and doing yet another mitzvah, and thereby bringing about the Gula Mitzvah Shlema. Now, Beninyan Le'inyan Loisei Inyan, talking about the idea of Guf and Neshama, there's the famous Gemara in Saita that tells us that when it comes to bringing two people together, for the Eibishter is Kosher Kekriyas Yamsuf. Begging the question, what's the connection between the two? Yes, notwithstanding the fact the Gemara talks about Zivug Rishon, Zivug Sheni, still, what is the connection between Mezavig Zivugim and Kriyas Yamsuf? So coming to this week's Parsha, the Chazal tell us, Vayashav ha'am le'esonai, the water returned to its strength, Al tikre le'esonai ela l'tnai. It returned to its condition, to its deal. What was the deal? Chazal tell us that by Maaseh Bereshis, on the third day, when the Eibishter split the waters and created the difference between dry land and water, the Eibishter made a t'nai with the waters. He took the neshamas of Klal Yisrael that would eventually leave Mitzrayim and stand before the Yamsuf, and said, these neshamas will one day stand before you, and when they do, you have to ensure to go contrary to your nature and be sure to split before them. And it's on that condition that we're bringing these waters into being. The t'nai was made. Says the Pasuk in Tehillim, at that moment in time, before the Pasuk in Tehillim, at that moment in time, say Chazal, the Yamsuf then reflected on the neshamas of Klal Yisrael when they stood before it, and it didn't want to split. It didn't want to split because it didn't recognize these neshamas. These are not the same neshamas that made the deal with all that time ago. Then they were holy, they were pristine, they were untainted. Now, all of a sudden, they've already in Golus Mitzrayim, 210 years. Again, Elohev De'avodah Zarah, Elohev De'avodah Zarah. So it doesn't recognize the neshamas. It doesn't want to split. Comes along the Pasuk in Tehillim, as we say in Halal, Vayar hayam v'yanais. The waters saw Bayanais and it ran away. What did it see? It saw the coffin of Yosef HaTzadik. It says Vayar hayam Bayanais, and it says also Legaba Yosef Bayanos Vayetze HaChutza. It's a nice play on words, but what is it about the Aron of Yosef that made the waters suddenly choose to run and split? And moreover, why does it have to wait to see Arena Shel Yosef? What happened to the t'nai? It already made a deal. It already made a condition. And the answer is this, to go back into the story of Yosef and his brothers. The Rebbe Rashab focuses on a pasuk. When the pasuk tells us, Vayakar Yosef ezecha v'hem lo hikaru. Yosef recognized his brothers, they didn't recognize him. Rashi says plain and simply, he recognized his brothers because they looked pretty much the same before they sold him down to Mitzrayim. He was then only 17 years old, now he's that much older, he has a beard, he looks different, they don't recognize him. And the Rebbe Rashab asks a simple question, but really, I mean, there's a certain familial resemblance that is always there. Did they not necessarily recognize him? And he goes on to explain that the essential difference between the Shvatim and Yosef It wasn't their whole approach to life. The Shvatim, very much like the Avos, they were shepherds, which enabled them to be as little involved in Gashmias as possible, so that they can be mostly involved in Ruchnias. Because as far as they were concerned, never the twain shall meet. You can't be involved in Gashmias without it coming at the expense and the compromise of Ruchnias. Yosef maintained otherwise, and his dreams reflected that. One dream was all about the sun, the moon, and the stars, all things up above. The second dream was about the wheat stalks. As far as he was concerned, you could be involved in Gashmias and it doesn't have to compromise and affect your Ruchnias. And they consider that a very real threat. And now when they come down to Mitzrayim, the man standing before them, even if there was a Havamina, that this is their brother, the one who was standing there before them was so utterly, completely, totally submerged in the Gashmias of Mitzrayim. He was managing everything, literally running single-handedly the whole economy. This can't be our brother. Yosef recognized his brothers, V'heim loy hikiruhu. They didn't recognize him. But a mistake it was. And ultimately he tells them, Ani Yosef, I am the same Yosef. Nothing was compromised. Everything about me and who I was remains absolutely the same. It's the same Yosef HaTzadik. How is it possible? How is it possible for Yosef to have been so submerged in the Gashmias without it compromising his Ruchnias? You know, somebody once came to the Frierdiker Rebbe who began sending out shluchim and asked him precisely that question. How could you send shluchim to further stretches away from the hubs of Yiddishkeit when it'll compromise their spiritual integrity? And he used the example, and he says, you could take a cup of hot water, but if you put it into a cold sea, the cup is going to cool off. And the Frierdiker Rebbe said, that's true. If you take a cup of hot water and you put it into a cold sea, the cup will cool off. But if the hot water is not coming from a cup, but it's coming from the mains pipe, or it remains eminently connected to source, then it remains hot regardless of the sea. And eventually, over time, it'll start warming up all parts of the sea around it as well. When a chassid, when a shliach remains eminently connected to the mishaleach, then regardless of where that shliach is, ultimately, he will remain always hot, and invariably the area around him is going to start to warm up as well. And that's the same reality over here as well. I mean, at the end of the day, the brothers, they saw Yosef, they couldn't understand. They couldn't believe it to be him. So utterly submerged in the Gashmias to somehow not affect his Ruchnias. But he was the same Yosef HaTzadik because he was attached to the mains. He was attached to the Mishaleach. And they made that misjudgment. They made that mistake. And that's what's going on over here as well. The Yamsuf Taka made it Tznai. Vayashavam Laisana Letznai, it made it Tznai, but now it sees the Neshamais standing before it. It doesn't recognize them. But then it saw Araynei Shel Yosef. And it knows that what you see is not necessarily what you get. It's not necessarily telling you the truth of what lies before you. The Aron of Yosef, Yosef HaTzadik, is telling the sea, don't make the same mistake that my brothers made with me. Look at yourself. Don't look at the surface. Look at yourself. On the surface, you are just water flowing, but beneath, there is a whole other world. Beneath the surface of these individuals standing before you is a pristine, holy neshama that remains eminently untainted, just as that was at the beginning of Maaseh Bereshis when they were presented before you. And that's the same reality when we say that Mizavik Zivugim, Kosher Kekriyas Yamsuf, it's the same thing. On the one hand, Arbaim Yom Kaidim Yasiras Avlad, it's already determined, Bas Ploini Leploini. Those are two neshamas introduced to each other. Then they come into the world and they navigate their individual paths. The neshamas begufim, they don't immediately recognize each other. And the Eibishter steps in to remind them, to take them back to that time when the Tanai was made, that the two of them are going to ultimately be brought back together. And the bigger message for you and me is, the same reality is the same with every single Yid that we encounter. We can see the external. We see the guf. We see the behavior. And we might make all sorts of assumptions. Comes along Araynei Shel Yosef before Kriyas Yamsuf and teaches to never give up regardless of the external appearance of another. Look beneath the surface to the holy, to the pristine neshama within. That's the essence of Yud Shvat. That is what the Frierdiker Rebbe taught. That is the whole essence, and that is the enduring legacy of the Rebbe's Nesias. You know, there's a Mishnah, Maseches Midos, that tells us, anyone who went into the Harabayas, who used to go in, V'yamin used to go in on the right side, V'yotzim B'smol, they would go out on the left. The only exception to that was an Ovel Nishdo Gedacht, was somebody else who was a Menuda, someone who was in Cherem, Umisha Avdaloy Aveda, and somebody who may have lost something. People coming to daven in the Beis HaMikdash would go in the right gate, they would bring in their kabbanos, and they would leave through the left gate. So in other words, they would go counterclockwise. But Avelim and those who were excommunicated and people looking for an Aveda, for a lost object, would do the opposite. They would enter the left gate and they would go clockwise and exit to the right side. And the question is asked in the Yerushalmi, in Brochus, Mipnei ma, why is Mela the Ovel, Mela the Menuda, but why is somebody who lost an Aveda treated like an Ovel? Why? What's the connection between the two? Why is he in that category? And the Yerushalmi answers, Kadesh Yishalu Loi, so they would ask him, why are you here? What's the problem? And he would say, point blank, I've lost something. And then they would give him a bracha. And they would say to him, Amokim Yachzel Chazevidasko. The Eibusher should help you find whatever it is that you lost. And maybe we can explain this also allegorically. The lost object is not necessarily a physical object. It could be a ruchnistic object. It's a person who's lost something of their connection to Yiddishkeit. And so they come to the Beis HaMikdash, hoping, yearning to find themselves, to rediscover what they lost. So why are these groups walking against the flow of everybody else? Why is the instruction that it be done in a way which essentially makes them stand out? And the answer is clearly not to embarrass them. Not to say, oh, you can't go with the flow of the rest of the people. It was in fact to accomplish the opposite. It was an ingenious device designed to help them. Everybody who moves through the Beis HaMikdash is going in a direction opposite to the normal path. That's clearly somebody who needs your extra help. An Ovel needs Nechama. He needs extra comfort. A Menuda needs extra chizuk. And those who may be struggling because they've lost something of their identity and their Yiddishkeit, they also need help. They also need encouragement. Somebody else to come along and inspire them, to restore them, to tell them, Hamokim Yachzel Chazevidasko. Imagine a Yid feels lost and feels directionless, and he comes to the Beis HaMikdash, and he walks through the left door, and he meets people going on their way out, people who may be more ruchniistic, people who may be more spiritually confident, and when they encounter him, then Ish Esreyehu Yazeru, and the message is simple, L'ochiv Yomer Chazak. They reach out to him, they encourage him, they strengthen him. Hamokim Yachzel Chazevidasko, the Eibusher should help you rediscover your true essence, your true self. The Beis HaMikdash was a space where all of Klal Yisrael were able to come together. Those who may have been more connected, and those who may have been struggling for one reason or another. Those who may be moving clockwise, and those who may be going counterclockwise. And that's exactly what the Rebbe set out to do. When the Rebbe confronted a world that was filled with so much pain and so much anxiety, and Yidden from every walk of life were some were disillusioned to the most extreme extent post-Holocaust, like those entering the Beis HaMikdash from the left entrance, the Jewish world was in mourning. The Jewish world was feeling excommunicated, and many had lost direction. And the Rebbe wanted every Yid, however remote geographically or spiritually, to know that they are valued. He wanted us all to know that no matter which gate we might be walking through, everybody counts. Every single neshama is the same. When you think about it, the Beis HaMikdash was essentially the prototype of every Chabad house around the world. When you go into a lighthouse, you expect to find lights. When you go into a house of representatives, you expect to find representatives. When you go into a Chabad house, the last thing you're not going to find are a whole bunch of Chabadniks, Lubavitch Chassidim. You will, however, find every other kind of Yid. Maybe those more engaged, maybe those less engaged, Maybe those more anchored, maybe those less anchored, those going clockwise and those who are going counterclockwise. Somebody once asked a particular shliach in a particularly remote place how he approaches random Yidden who were not certainly accustomed to being stopped by strangers to ask them to put on tefillin or whatever else besides. And he answered quite beautifully, if they drop their wallet and I go running up to them, excuse me, sir, you dropped this, would they not be thrilled with me? Would they not be happy with me? Would they not thank me? So now they lost a different Aveda, something spiritual. Why shouldn't they be grateful for that? Why shouldn't I run up to them to return that lost object to them as well? The neshamas will certainly be grateful for that. Every single one of us is a mikdash ma'at, which necessitates us asking ourselves, what am I doing to reach out to even one more neshama, to make a difference to even one more person, to look past the guf, into the neshama, into the pnimi? Because that is a fundamental and most basic component of the Rebbe's Nesias. And so long as we are still here in this Golus, no one has the right to rest on the laurels and think I've done enough or this isn't for me. The Nesias continues no less, the demands continue no less, and the Avodah continues no less. I was on a flight a short while back with my wife on a solidarity trip, coming back from Eretz Yisrael with the community. And there was a woman sitting next to me. And she starts telling me all about her wonderful community in London and all about her wonderful rabbi. And at a certain point, I just thought, you know what? And I asked her, I said, do you know the rabbi of Mel Hill? Me, my community. So she says, Shachet. I said, yeah. She goes, don't like him very much. So I looked to her and said, okay. And my wife smiles and says, can I ask you why not? She says, yeah, I read his regular weekly column. I see him on television, whatever. And he's very strong and very opinionated and very right-wing. And she sees me smiling from ear to ear. And she says, look, I'm really sorry if you have anything to do with him, but I really don't like him. A little while later, we got up to walk to the back of the plane. My wife and I stretch our legs. The woman is standing there with another couple. She was part of a group that had also come, and that other couple must have recognized me because she suddenly stops us dead in our tracks and she says, what's your name? So my wife, knowing what's about to really go down right now, she says, Chani, and quickly beats a hasty retreat. She looks to me, goes, what's your name? I said, I'm Yitzchak. She goes, yeah, well, what's your surname? So I said, Shachet. She says, and so you are. Are you the rabbi? Hoping to make light of an otherwise embarrassing situation, I said, let's just say I'm very, very closely related to him. To which she said, oh, good, as long as you're not him, because I really don't like him. And I have to tell you, it's an excellent exercise in bittul. It's good therapy sometimes to forget yourself, to drop the image and let others tell you how it is. And this is the most amazing thing of all. We got along so well throughout this flight. I helped her with a sweater in the overhead, taking it down, sharing a joke or two, etc., etc. But isn't it amazing how people are so quick to jump to conclusions and form preconceived ideas, judging passing verdict without necessarily experiencing matters firsthand? And for the record, I'm not suggesting she's wrong, but sometimes there are those who are too quick to pass judgment on others without, again, looking beneath the surface. They make the same mistake as the Yamsuf, as the brothers of Yosef did, without looking beneath the surface at the inherent etzem and goodness that exists within. A story I heard firsthand from Herschel Folgeman, Olav Shalom. And he and David Edelman were standing one afternoon at the elevator in 770, and the doors open, and out came the Rebbe, who was not yet then the Rebbe, and he approaches and he says to them, would you like to hear a beautiful and fresh thought that I just heard from the Rebbe, from the Shver? And he begins, and I'm going to paraphrase a little bit over here. As I heard it, he says, different people walk into 770. Some are more, some are less engaged. My custom is to welcome everybody with the same love and with the same warmth. But some Elter Hasidim are telling me that maybe it's inappropriate because it could be perceived as legitimizing their non-observant lifestyle. And with mass assimilation that was then going on, there was that concern. And the Rebbe told them, you know what, I didn't know whether they were right or not. So I asked the Rebbe. And he says, I went upstairs and I asked the Rebbe, and he told me the following. Every parent loves a child that they have as though there's no way to in any way measure that love. The love of a parent to a child is essentially limitless. There are no barriers. There are no constraints. But when one suddenly has a second child, you'd think that somehow they divide the love, but that's not how it works. The love just multiplies. They love that child infinitely as well. Endless affection for both children and more. Sometimes, continue the Frierdiker Rebbe, a child can be born with certain disability. The body is imperfect. And the Rebbe said, you'll see that to this child, the parents have an extra special connection. Although you'll ask, but how can that be? If anything, this child is lacking. The child is seemingly deficient. And the Frierdiker Rebbe told the Rebbe at the time, because for this child, life is more challenging, and therefore they have a deeper place within them reserved for that child. Continue to Frierdiker Rebbe, every single Yid is a child of the Eibishter. And the Eibishter loves every single Yid. You can't imagine how great that love is. But sometimes there are those who may be somewhat disabled. Every mitzvah corresponds to another organ in the body, Ramach Evarim, corresponding to the Ramach mitzvahs. So when a Yid is lacking in a certain mitzvah, then that limb is lacking. When one doesn't put on tefillin, then there's a disability in the arm. When there's no tzedakah, there's a disability in the hand. When there's no limud Torah, there's a disability in the mouth, etc., etc. Said the Frierdiker Rebbe, learn from the Eibishter, love every single Yid with every fiber of your being. But when you encounter such a Yid, love them even more. That is the essence of why we are celebrating, what the essence of Yud Shvat is, what the essence of the Rebbe's Nesias is, and the Nesias continues no less, the demands continue no less, and the Avodah continues no less. And what does that mean when we say that the Nesias continues no less? The Rebbe famously quoted from the Yerushalmi that makes the observation regarding Shimshon HaGibor. When on the one hand the Pasuk says, Vu Shefer Es Yisrael Esim Shana, he was a judge for 20 years. And on the other hand, the Pasuk actually tells us, Arboim Shana, 40 years. And the Talmud Yerushalmi asks the question, how do you reconcile the discrepancy? And answers that Taka Einachanami, physically Begashmias, he was the Nasi for 20 years, B'chayav, and he continued to be the same amount of years afterwards, also in that same capacity. And the Rebbe quoted that Yerushalmi on Yud Shvat, Tovshin Lamed, 20 years after Yud Shvat Tovshin Yud, stressing that the Frierdiker Rebbe continues to be a shayfet. Our Nasi 20 years after, no less than he was equally before. And the Rebbe went on then to say that every single one of us has a responsibility, that we have to make a cheshbon and nefesh, and understand and appreciate what we are doing to ensure that we're not nispol from this golus, and what we're doing to go ahead and bring about the Geula Mitzvah Shlema. The Rebbe challenged every single one of us to deeply consider how much we are doing in this regard. And every single one of us sitting here again tonight in Yud Shvat, this Verbringen, has to make our own cheshbon and nefesh. Not to be nispol from the world, not to be nispol from the golus, not to be the nispol from the choshech, kofel, and mechupol, and keep doing what we need to do in afatzas hamayonos and afatzas hayados to bring about the Geula Mitzvah Shlema. Regarding the Korban Pesach, the Eibishter instructed that the dam had to be put on the mashkoif, and then the Rebbe Eibishter said, "V'lo yeh b'chem negev l'mashchis," that there will be no opportunity for the mashchis lingoif to attack you by kaisias Mitzrayim. Says Rashi in the Pasuk, you might think, therefore, that if Yisrael was not in a home where there was the blood, and he was in the home of a Mitzri, then there would be opportunity for the mashchis to go ahead and attack. Says the Pasuk, V'lo yibachem negev l'mashchis, b'kaisias Mitzrayim, regardless. And the Rebbe went on to explain that there are those who seek to involve themselves in reaching out to other people, but it has to be on their terms. I'll engage, but only when I'm feeling up to it. I'll engage, but only when I have the time. I'll engage, but only when he comes to me, but not when I have to necessarily go out to them, etc. I'm not going to seek him out. I'm not going to go down to him. Comes along the Pasuk and teaches us. You have a Yid who has become so disenfranchised after everything that's happened, all the makkos, all the niflois, and everybody was warned. Let's say, nobody should go out. Nobody should leave their home. And still, where is he? He's in the Mitzri's house. And nevertheless, the Eibishter b'chvaydo v'atzmai comes down to rescue him even in that Egyptian home. The Eibishter loves you so much, it doesn't matter how far you have drifted, he will still step in to rescue you. Said the Rebbe, Dayoy la'eved liyos karabai. If the Eibishter can do it, every single one of us needs to get off our pedestal and do the same. Find the neshamas and bekarven laTorah, bring them closer once more. In fact, the Rebbe observes how Makkos B'chares happened dafka at midnight, Bachatzais Halayla, in the middle of the night. And Klal Yisrael went out dafka be'etzem hayom hazeh, bang in the middle of the afternoon. These two pivotal moments of Geula happened at the darkest point of night and at the brightest point of day. Sometimes some can feel the darkness is too intense. I am struggling right now. I can't extricate myself from my own personal situations. Or I'm feeling too tired, or I'm feeling too old. I don't have the same energy. I'm not the same person as I once was. I'll wait for better times, or I'll wait for somebody else to come along and do it. Comes along the Eibishter and brings about the first part of Gula, Dafka Bachatzos Halayla, when things seem to be their most intense in darkness, that's when Gula comes about. Li'idoch Gisa, someone is shining bright. I'm good. Everything is bright. I do enough. I don't need to progress. I'm satisfied where I'm at. Even to him, even at the brightest point of day, we point out that's what happened. That's when they experience Gula from Mitzrayim. Don't rest on your laurels. You still have more to do. You have to climb ever higher. And in our context, again, some might find themselves lowly, some might find themselves dark, find themselves not here, not now, give me a few days, maybe I'm more up for it, maybe I've already done too much, I've done my time, etc., or I'm already doing enough, or I feel I'm shining bright. Don't fool yourself. Until you see that ultimate light of Gula, you have to keep generating more light as well. And I'll finish on this last point. My grandfather, Olav Hashalom, was a Talmud Mufak of Rav Bloch in Telz. And when he had his first Yechidus by the Rebbe, he had opportunity with intent to ask the Rebbe, I don't know precisely what it was, but a certain specific question on something to do with Hashkafa, as might be discussed a lot in the yeshivish world. But the Rebbe Kedarka B'Kodesh was the one asking all the questions of my Zayda and of my grandmother. So he never got around to asking the question. And when he left the Yechidus, it was a Thursday night, and he never got around, and he was upset, he was disappointed. And then came Shabbos, and it was Farbrengen. And at the Farbrengen, the second Sikha, the Rebbe actually addressed the very point that he wanted to ask about. And he thought to himself, wow, amazing. What a coincidence. And then with the singing, after the Sikha, the Rebbe turned around to him and said, Nu, ist du schon als verstandig? And in that moment, he became a real chassid. And then the Rebbe said to him, Zog l'chaim. And he said, like a real Yakke, ich kenn nicht. So the Rebbe looked at him and said to him, Ob du kennst be'emes nicht, yemol darfst du nicht. If you really can't, then you don't have to. And that's the challenge for every single one of us. Which one of us, when the Rebbe looks to us and tells us what we have to do, can dare actually say, ich kenn nicht. Ob du kennst be'emes nicht, yemol darfst du nicht. But at the end of the day, Bachatzais Halayla, be'etzem hayom hazeh, none of us ever have the opportunity to actually make that declaration. We have an absolute responsibility to do everything that we can to bring about the Gula Mitzvah Shlema. And finally, the Shaloh HaKodesh asks a question. Chazal tell us, Asid in Yisrael, sheyemru shira la'asid lavai. In the future, Klal Yisrael will sing shira about the future. He says, how does that make sense? You say, Asid in Yisrael, sheyemru shira, in the future we'll sing a shira to welcome Mashiach. What does it mean, Asid in Yisrael, sheyemru shira la'asid lavai? And he answers as follows. The Gemara actually tells us famously in the Milchama of Sancheiriv, where Chizkiyahu HaMelech was to be made Mashiach, and Sancheiriv would have been the Milchama's Gog and Magog. Only what? Midas Adin comes before the Eibishter and says, Ma David Melech Yisrael David Melech Yisrael Shamar Shir Lefanecha, who did sing Shiras V'Shishbachos, Lo Yoso Mashiach, you didn't make Mashiach. Chizkiyahu Shamar Lefanecha, he didn't sing Shiras V'Shishbachos, him you will make Mashiach. And in that moment, that was it. The moment was actually lost. Lamar B'Hamishra, the final mem, the end of mem in the middle of the word, to show us it was a closed opportunity. Asks the Shalah Kodesh, if you look in Divrei HaYamim, it says very clearly over there, Michtam L'Chizkiyahu. Chizkiyahu did sing a song. What was the concern? What was the challenge that Midas Hadin is bringing before the Eibishter against Chizkiyahu HaMelech? And he explains that when the Eibishter informed that he was going to give Sancherov into the hands of Chizkiyahu, the Malachim there and then, even before it happened, sang Shira in anticipation of the victory that was yet to be delivered and with an absolute emunah in knowing that will happen. Chizkiyahu, yes, he certainly sang Shiras V'Shishbachos, but only after the fact. Chizkiyahu Shaloi Amar Lefanecha, he didn't sing, he didn't take his cue from the Malachim, he didn't sing beforehand in the belief, in the anticipation. That was the problem. Says the Shalot, that's the meaning. Asidin Yisrael Sheyomru Shira Le'asid Lavai. In the future, that is us now, Klal Yisrael will sing about the future. They will have the emunah, they will have the conviction, they will have the tenacity to sing in anticipation as Ot Dot Kum Shoin de Geula. We don't make the same mistake. We know that the Nesius continues no less. We know that the demands continue no less. And if the Rebbe told us that Geula is imminent, then we continue with the Amunah and the Avodah to finally make it happen. Tonight, on Yud Shvat, we have tremendous Hakara Satay Vashreinu Matay Chalkenu. We are Hasidim of the Rebbe. We have been given a unique charge. We have been given the unique opportunity, unlike anybody before us, to have that final chance to bring about the Geula Mitzvah Shlema. And the Rebbe told us we will be able to achieve that objective. Werd nicht nispal vom Welt, kehre Welt. Make your impression on the world. We can, we must, and we will bring about the Geula Mitzvah Shlema v'tekef u'miyad mamish now.
Yiram, Oyena nam, oyena nam, oyena nam, oyena nam, Yiram, oyena nam, oyena nam. Oh, yeah, yeah, no, yeah, 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 la, yeah, 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 mo, yeah, na, mo, yeah, na, yeah, yeah, ram. Oh, yeah, 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 la, yeah, ma, yeah, oh, yeah, yeah. Oyena nam, 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 oyera, 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 oyena nam. Oyena nam, oyena nam, oyena nam, oyena nam, oyena nam, oyena nam, oyera, 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 oyena, oyera, oyena nam, oyena nam, ay la ram, ay yam, ay la yam, ay ra ram. Thank you.
I was born in the Soviet Union in 1968 in Kiev in Ukraine. This is 1970, so it's like 50 years, full 50 years after the revolution. Every Jew had a tree in their house. It was the New Year's tree. You had a New Year's tree, it was decorated, you had gifts under the tree. And I didn't even know what it meant to be a Jew. It never came up, never ever, which is exactly how the Soviets wanted it. In 1977, we emigrated from the Soviet Union to the US. This is the heat of the Cold War. There I was a Jew, here I was a Russian. There's black kids, there's Spanish kids, there's Albanian kids, there's regular American kids, there's white kids. The teacher took me around all the classrooms and had me do the Cossack dance. Nothing really changed for the better coming here. The best thing that ever happened to me in that first year was getting involved with release time.
In 1941, when the Frierdiker Rebbe came to America, the first project, outreach project that Rebbe started was the release time program.
It was on Labor Day, and some Bachrim came up to me and said, "Are you coming with us to the release time conference?" And I was like, "What's going on? There's a conference, release time?"
Every Wednesday, Bachrim go to the local public school, take out a group of children that registered, take them to a local shul. The children are gathered together, the instructor said with them Moida'ani, said with them Shema Yisrael. Today, Baruch Hashem, we have over 200 Bachrim that go out on release time every week. We are in 90 public schools.
There were speakers, and they basically stressed the importance of the release time. There was a school that needed somebody to help them out, so I went with that group of Bachrim to Queens.
The first year I was in America, and I was in public school in 3rd grade, I went to release time. That actually gave some direction to my life, that I was actually not just some Soviet refugee, but I'm a Jewish kid, and there's something to be learned from that. There's something to be done about that.
A lot of things that I was teaching, I took for granted because that's just the way I grew up. I think one kid said to me, "I didn't know that Jews prayed." And like that is like mind-boggling. We try to plant as many seeds as possible that will come up later, less so intellectually, but more so emotionally. Associate Yiddishkeit with a good time, a warm feeling.
Little by little, I remember feeling like I belong somewhere. I'm finding a place where everyone's kind of like me, and it was a good place. It led to Jewish camp, but the next September, instead of going back to PS 179, my parents enrolled me in the Baba Yeshiva.
Was auch yedua der Isaninus miyuchodo, der spezielle Stadlus wie Igie, was gewinnt beim Baal HaYilude, beim Negeh zu der Jugend. Und yedua eiche der Linie von Shalom, was man das gemacht, der Shoah miyuchedes lilimudi das. Für die Kinder, wo die Eltern haben sehr viele nicht geschickt, zu kein Chinuch von Yiddishkeit. לכל הפוכס, במקום חינוך הם in the public school, in the בתי ספר ממלכתיים, soll man mit sie dorten lernen, לכל הפוכס, wie viel zu lustig Yiddishkeit.
I'm very grateful. I love Hakar Satov to the Rebbe specifically because I feel like he cared about me. I feel like he was looking out for me. He blazed the trail of breadcrumbs which you can follow. He had a plan.
Und danach hat man gesehen, bei Meshach Hashonim, als aufgestellt geworden von sehr Alofim oder Wowes, wo seinen danach weggehen lernen in Yeshivas und geworden Shemre Teiro mit keinem Mitzvahs, Kechol Hadorosh. Darf sich mehr nicht haben Geduld und nicht jallen in Tirche wie Yigie, bis zum Messias Nefesh, כי פשוטו auf der groben Sache und aufgraben dem Bejehr bis waren Zetonim Stürmen dem Mayim Chaim Shebetecha.
Growing up, I heard my father speak about release time as the beginning of his journey to Yiddishkeit. My father's story definitely impacts me every time I go because I think about how much can happen just from one moment. Let alone a whole hour, let alone a whole year.
What we accomplish every Wednesday with these children, the tefillahs that they say and the brachas that they say, we have no idea. The Rebbe has an idea. The Rebbe knows that power.
I'm confident that he is making a difference. I'm confident that he is making a good contribution to these kids' lives, even if they don't understand about it yet. He is that shliach now that is holding those kids' hands and getting them ready for the next step.
So during the Nigunim, someone walked over to me and said to me, "What are you doing in release time? Don't you work for Camp Amuna?" So I said, "No, I got to tell you something." And I'll borrow a pasuk from this coming week's Haftarah, where the Shiras Devara says, "Acha kamti Devara, kamti Eim B'Yisrael." Before I got involved with Camp Amuna, I actually, in 1982, ran Release Time. I was director of Release Time then. I'm sure it was probably the best year Release Time ever had. But going back to Camp Amuna for just a minute, over the years we had, as the camp runs, you got things you have to do, you have to buy, you have to go places. We had one of the places that we do purchasing was a company called Ellenville Lumber. I walked in there was an old lady. She was in her 90s already. She owned the place. She didn't do nothing. She came to the office every morning, and she put her head down on the desk, and her son ran the business. And one day I walked in there, and she said, Camp Amuna, come over here a minute. So I said, Mrs. Rodenberg, what can I do for you? He said, when you get back to camp, tell your father not to sit on his hands. So I said, what? He said, tell your father not to sit on his hands. I said, what does that mean? She said, if he's sitting on his hands, he can't write a check. So for you out there in the big world of the internet, you're sitting home, don't sit on your hands. Get to your computer, type in the words jewishhour.org, and help us keep this teaching of what the Rebbe explained to us so carefully and so exact that I won't even attempt to do it, and keep us this dream of the Rebbe and Frierdiker Rebbe alive. And this brings me to our next speaker. To our next speaker, with permission, I'm going to tell the Seidis of a Cheder. I don't know if Rabbi Shapiro remembers this, but I remember it vividly. So in 1976, I studied in Miami Beach, and Rabbi Leibel Shapiro was my Rosh Yeshiva. And we decided that for the Yontif of Shavuos, we're going to make a learn-a-thon. 48 hours of Shavuos, we are going to teach these children as many hours possible, and we're going to knock it into their heads. They're going to be having only Torah, 48 hours. At the end of the Yontif, we promised them that for the grand prize, for the grand rally, we're going to go rent out a roller skating ring, and we're going to go roller skating. Now, everything was going great. At the end of Yontif, as we do in Ari Asadeh and even now today all over, to the end of the Yontif, we have a Farbrengen, like the Rebbe used to Farbrengen 770 at the Siyam of a Chag. We had a Yontif Farbrengen. And Rabbi Shapiro said a L'chaim, and he said another L'chaim, and then he Farbrenged and another L'chaim, and then he said the hard words we couldn't believe. He said, I want to go along with you to the roller skating ring. Now, what do we need our Rosh Yeshiva to come with us to a roller skating ring for? That's the one place we're going to have a good time. No, he wants to come with us. He said, I won't drive because I said L'chaim. So we had a designated driver. And Rabbi Shapiro came to the roller skating ring. He came to the roller skating ring, and they turned on Mordechai Ben David, and the kids were having a good time, and everybody's going roller skating. And then Rabbi Shapiro says, I want to speak to everybody. Okay, Shiva wants, he wants it. So we sat him down in the DJ's box, and they cut off the music, and we gave him a live microphone. And I remember like it is today, he said as follows. Nobody got it, you keep going, just keep going, go around, go around, go around, go around. But just think, you're going around and around and around for 2 hours straight, and you're getting nowhere. You're getting nowhere. You're going hard, faster and slower, and you're going with dancing like this and that, but you're getting nowhere. He said, that's not tachlis. Tachlis is you have to go madrega and madrega and madrega. You don't have to stay in one place forever, around and round and round and round. That story I remember when I think of Rabbi Shapiro. I'm not going to continue any more secrets of it, but I'd like to call upon Rabbi Leibel Shapiro, the Rosh Yeshiva of the Yeshiva, Miami Beach, Florida, to continue the bringing. You could take a L'chaim, everybody. You could say L'chaim.
L'chaim, l'chaim, l'chaim v'levrocha. This is a Farbrengen. So you have to say l'chaim, and I think I'll follow the direction of what we usually do by Farbrengen, which is not like you give a shir in Chassidus. So that's basically mainly for the meyach, for the intellect. The reason of a Farbrengen is to bring it down more l'maisa b'peil, which means it's a time to speak divrei hiseiris in connection to what the special Farbrengen is all about, divrei hiseiris. And the best divrei hiseiris to say, in order to be niseirer in this subject of chizukais kashrus, which is negayah to Yuchvat, is to chazer over words of the Rebbe, especially things that the Rebbe said on the Farbrengen of Yuchvat. And them is the things that we remember more is from the time we were bochrim in yeshiva. That's when we are more involved in the inyonim. B'meila, for me, the inyonim that the Rebbe spoke in the chofs brings back a lot of memories, And that is the best divrei reseiros that we could get when it comes to Farbrengen of Yud Shvat. Yud Shvat, which is the Yom HaHilula, Yom HaYistalkes of Frierdiker Rebbe, the day that the Rebbe became the Nossi Chabad, the Nossi Hador, and that basically happened the same day, the day after together. So now it's be'emes, I want to say not 75 years, but 76 years from the Nesius of the Rebbe. And I will, b'meshech of the talk, bring in different werter and yonim that the Rebbe said in connection to his Nesius and b'chlal connection to his kashas that Chassidim have to the Rebbe and what the Rebbe has to Chassidim. The Rebbe obviously is the hemshech of the Alter Rebbe, the hemshech of Chassidus, which mainly means the hemshech of the Frierdiker Rebbe. So as much as Yud Shvat is the Yom HaHilul of the Frierdiker Rebbe, what we feel closer is the fact that this is the day of the Nesius, that the Rebbe's Nesius started. I remember when the Beis Yisrael, the Gerer Rebbe, passed away. So the Rebbe spoke about it in the middle of the Shiva of the Beis Yisrael. The Rebbe spoke about, not about him, his brother, the Leif Simcha, took over. So the Rebbe by Farbrengen spoke about the Leif Simcha. Why? Because the Iker is what's Negeya to later for the Ossi, that's what counts more. So for us, Ben Negeya, as much as the day of the Hilul of the Frierdiker Rebbe, which is nothing you can say greater than that, but nevertheless, the fact that this is the day of the Nesius, of this beginning of the Nesius of the Rebbe, that touches our heart even more. And as I said, the Rebbe, this is the Hemshech of the Frierdiker Rebbe, the Hemshech of the Alter Rebbe. And it's interesting that from Yutes Kislev till Yud Shvat, there are 49 days. Just like there are 49 days from Pesach, from Yetzias Mitzrayim to Matan Torah. So Matan Torah actually started by Yetzias Mitzrayim, but it came to culmination by Matan Torah 49 days later, and it came through the Shvi, through Moshe Rabbeinu. The same, what the Alter Rebbe started, the Inyan of Chassidus Chabad continued, and continued throughout all these generations, till it came to the Day Shvi, and that's the end, going to be the bringing of Mashiach. That's the Hemshech to the beginning, to the Alter Rebbe. And that's the 49 days. Rabbi Yael once told me that Purim Tovshin Yud Aleph, by the Farbrengen was upstairs, very crowded, and the Rebbe wanted to give some L'chaim who was at the end of the room. It was hard for him to get through, so he asked they should pass down the L'chaim to him. And Rabbi Mentlik was standing right there. Rabbi Mentlik says, and anybody who remembers how he spoke would appreciate what I'm going to say. He said, der Alter Rebbe allein will dir geben L'chaim, und du Beste, man soll das überschicken zu dir. The Alter Rebbe himself wants to give you L'chaim, and you're asking that it should be handed over to you. Passed down. And the Rebbe overheard him, and the Rebbe said, das Wenzach in die zwei Shittes in Kav. We know after the Tzimtzum there's the Kav, so there are two Shittes in Kabbalah. One Shitt in Kabbalah is that the Kav is Kav Echad Oruch, it's one low Kav, and there are Shittes that the Kav is also in Nekudas, there are different Nekudas in the different parts of Seder Ishtalshalis. What the Rebbe was saying, if it's all Kav Echad, then what he said is right, this is the Alter Rebbe Alein. If it's also in Nekudas, it's a Hemshech of the Alter Rebbe, but in a different way. But whichever way we're going to look at it, what the Rebbe is the Hemshech in the Nesius of what Chassidus Chabad started and what will end with the coming of Mashiach. And that's the day that we're celebrating today. We're celebrating the Hilul of the Frierdiker Rebbe, and mainly we're celebrating the beginning of the Nesius of the Rebbe, which started on Yud Shvat, Zorach HaShemesh, Bo HaShemesh, that right away he started the Nesius of the Rebbe. So I think the first thing I want to start, we're talking about such a Farbrengen, which is supposed to give us the Chizuk HaIskashus to the Rebbe. It's supposed to give us a more deeper understanding of what the Rebbe is. But here is not Negeya, here it's not important to such a crowd to explain the greatness of the Rebbe. Everyone knows that. but just to be made ourselves to straighten our iskashers. So I think it's kedai to mention different things from different fabrengs that the Rebbe said, which will give us some hiseiris, some chizuka iskashers. Yud Shvat, the fabrenga Yud Shvat, Tovshin Chof Ches, the Rebbe spoke about the beginning of the Nesias of the Frierdiker Rebbe. And if you were standing by the fabrenga and you heard the way the Rebbe repeated what the Frierdiker Rebbe said, you could feel that this is not repeating a story that happened to the Frierdiker Rebbe. He was living it, that's describing himself. What did he say? He was talking about the Sikha of the Frierdiker Rebbe from Simchas Torah, Tofresh Tzadi Gimel. And that Sikha was printed in the beginning of the Kutei Deburim came out, this was printed. But there was something, the Rebbe said that something that the Frierdiker Rebbe said by the Fabrengen, but it wasn't printed in the Sikha. I think the Frierdiker Rebbe took it out, didn't want to have it printed. But obviously the Rebbe was there, seems like, and he said what he heard what the Frierdiker Rebbe say. And this is what the Frierdiker Rebbe said, and the Rebbe explained it. The Frierdiker Rebbe said that B'shas his father was talking to him about accepting the Nesias, which we have to know exactly when that was, during the year of Tofresh Pei or whatever, but he was talking to him about it. The Frierdiker Rebbe said he's maskim, but he made it nai, a condition that should be b'chesed u'berachamim. And then the Frierdiker Rebbe said, "Sieht mir ongekommen mit asach gesund. It cost me a lot of health, but what I did was, I was crying, shaloi l'ngeya or shaloi l'rachik. I was crying to make sure, davening to the Eibishter, he should never offend anybody and never be merach and never reject anybody." And he said, he cried so much, at the Wand seine geworden durchgeweicht mit Tränen. The walls of my room were soaked of tears. And when the Rebbe said this, he was choking up. And you could see he's living it, because that seems to be, he was explaining what he did when he accepted the Nesias. The Avos Yisrael of the Frierdiker Rebbe, we know the Rebbe in the letter for the first Yortzeit, he writes that you should go to different places and talk about the Frierdiker Rebbe, what part about the Avos Yisrael of the Frierdiker Rebbe. But this is what the Frierdiker Rebbe said, that he cried and tears, the walls were soaked of tears, shalei l'ngeya v'shalei l'rachik. And the Rebbe explained what that means. What does crying mean? Crying means you're overwhelmed. It goes beyond your capability. So when the Frierdiker Rebbe said he cried about it, it means he put himself into that inyan that the Nesias should be in such a way. Shalei l'ngeya l'rachik was so special. And the walls, he said, of his room became soaked of tears. What's a room? A room is a place where a lot of people could go. Doesn't depend on who you are. A tall person, a short person, a fat person, a skinny person. Everybody could go into the same room. And that's what the Frierdiker Rebbe meant, that the idea that there should be this room, that he should be able to contain everybody, soaked with tears. And then the Rebbe added, the Gemara says, Mi she'ein lebayis ein le'odom. That means the concept of a bayis, of a room where a person lives, that's an negeya to his etzem. And Chassidus explains it. What's the pshat in the Gemara? Mishein lebayis ein odom. Actually, the Gemara doesn't say that word. The Gemara says mishein lekarka ein odom. But the Rebbe brings the Tosfos says that it means karka livnis all of bayis. So the bayis represents again the etzem of the odom. And the Frierdiker Rebbe said that his bayis, which is geneyet to his etzem, got soaked with tears for this purpose. Shalei l'ngeya shalei l'rachik. And that's the way the Rebbe accepted his Nesias also. We find other sikhs of the Rebbe, which he spoke about, the Frierdiker Rebbe, by the previous Rabbeim, which also reflected that he is in that way, he is doing the same way. And that is in the Fabrengen of Yud Shvat, Tovshin Chof Aleph, which is a long time ago. But I remember the sikha from then, I have to tell you, because it's such an inyan that also the Rebbe said it in such a way that you could feel he was talking about himself. The Rebbe said that the Rabbeim, from time to time, would mention names of Chassidim to themselves in order to be ma'arer their his kashrus to him. Just like the nature is that when you gaze at somebody very strongly, even if you're looking from his back and he doesn't see what you're doing, it causes him to turn around. That's nature. So by looking at them, it causes them to turn around. So the Rabbeim would look and look at Chassidim within themselves, by themselves. But that caused wherever the chassid was across the ocean would turn around. And these are all things that we see. What the Frierdiker Rebbe, the way Rebbe was talking about the Frierdiker Rebbe, but you could see he was talking about himself. That this is him. We know the Rebbe said many times that whatever the Frierdiker Rebbe writes about his father, in the letters, different places, hat auch gepaskent auf sich. And the Rebbe wrote a Reihe von the word from the Baal Shem Tov, Din v'cheshm, die Freuen in Odem mit Daite v'shalem bedaite, but it's on himself. And the Rebbe said that the Frierdiker Rebbe, whatever he said about his father, really is about himself. And by the Rebbe we saw it, that's really about himself. Which means that the Rebbe would think about the Chassidim, and that would awaken his kashrus to the Rebbe. In one case, actually, the Rebbe himself said how his machshove worked on somebody. Remember, this was Yud Shvat Tovshin Chav Dalet. The Rebbe was upset why they didn't sing the niggin of the Kapitel Tilim of that year of the Rebbe. And then he said, he used the word, let Krinsky sing it, in die Tscheiches zu die Inyonim, und nennt mir zum Ziehen und von Ziehen. And then he said, there is somebody else here who gives the rechev, the markove, or the rechev, the cars he used to supply. Somebody used to supply the cars to take the Rebbe to the hill and from the hill. Let him also say L'chaim. And the Rebbe stopped for a second. He said, Af andere helft nicht mein Dibur, af hat geholfen mein Machshove. Verlosen aboard. So the Rebbe said clearly, he thought about him verlosen aboard, and that caused him to verlosen aboard. And this is all the inyonim that all the Rabbeim did, and this is the hemshech of all the Rabbeim. So this is all from the Rebbe's side, what the Rebbe does to the Chassidim, turns to the Chassidim, and his ava to the Chassidim, and is doing that Chassidim should connect. But then we have to look at our side. The Rebbe's side of his kashrus to us is really twofold. Twofold means there's two parts here. And we're not talking about Klal Yisrael because the Rebbe is the Rebbe of Klal Yisrael. But talking about the Rebbe as far as Chassidim are concerned. Every Chassid is a member of Kahal Adas Chassidim. Kahal Adas Chassid Chabad. And B'meila, the Rebbe is connected to you. The Lubavitcher Rebbe is connected to the Kahal Chassid Chabad. And since I am a member in that Kahal Chassid Chabad, so B'meila, the Rebbe is connected to me. But that's not enough. That's not the only thing. That's Ba'ifim Kloli because I'm a member of the group. So there is one group, and I'm a part of that group. The truth is, the Kosher of the Rebbe to Chassidim is to every single Chassid as a Yochid, as individual. Every single Chassid as whoever he is, as a Prat. We know the Medrash says, the Rebbe quotes the Medrash many times, Tzadikim Daimim Lebeiram, Tzadikim are like their creator, like the Eibishter, which by the way, the Rebbe writes that some people write on this Maimer Chazal, there is no such thing, and the Rebbe has a list of Maramakaimus where this Medrash is. So by the Eibishter we find the same thing. The Eibishter started the Aseres HaDibros, Anochi Hashem Elikecha. I am Hashem Elikecha, Elikecha lo sheyochid. Not singular, not plural. He was speaking to close to 3 million people. Why didn't he say Anochi Hashem Elikechem? And the Chazal give two opposite answers. One answer is because when you speak to a whole group as one unit, you use Lashon Yochid. And Rashi says it in different places. Another place, another Chazal say, he was speaking to every individual. Every Yid that stood by Har Sinai felt that the Lashon of the Medrash, Imi had Dibur Medab. Maybe she's talking to me. There are other pshatim this. But these are the two Chazals. And the question is, it's a stira. Was he talking to the Klal as a Klal? So he's talking to every Yid because he's a member of Klal Yisrael? Or was he talking to every single Yid separately? And the answer is they're both true. Der Eibishter hat gerät zu alle Yidden und der Eibishter hat gerät zu jeder Yidden. But the Rebbe, this was an expression a lot of times. Alle Yidden und jeder Yid. All the Yidden, so you're a member of Klal Yisrael. All the Yidden. So you are a member of all the Yidden. And then there is the concept of being a Yid, and you are a Yid on your own. And the same thing is b'negeya the Rebbe in Chassidim. That is the Rebbe of Klal Adas Chassidei Chabad, which extends itself to the Klal Yisrael, and each one feels he's a member of that group, but Mele is connected. But then there's another thing. Each one as a Yochid is connected to the Rebbe. And that's from the Rebbe side, and that has to be from our side too. We have to feel that. We have to feel our connection to the Rebbe, not only because I'm a Lubavitcher. There is Lubavitch, and I'm a Lubavitcher. So I'm part of Lubavitch. So I'm also. It's not enough. It's me. The Rebbe is connected to me, and I'm connected to the Rebbe. Actually, where did you, Amol, feel it? You would feel it when you went into Yechidus. When you were able to go into Yechidus, those years, that those that were Zeiche, I don't know how many here remember it, and were Zeiche to go into Yechidus Protis, which stopped in the beginning of the Lamas for Bochum, and then a little bit later for everybody, stopped. When you went into Yechidus, that's what you got the feeling. Like this, when you stood by Fabrengen, there are thousands of people, I'm amongst them. The Rebbe is for everybody. The Rebbe is close to everybody, cares about everybody. But by Yechidus, you felt, Ano u'malkel b'chideya, you were there alone with the Rebbe. And there you felt the hiskashus the Rebbe Naif Proti, not only as a member of the Kohol, as the Klal, but also, and even more maybe as a Prat. At kedekach that I remember after going out of Yechidus many times, for many weeks. These are in the Chofs talking about, and the Rebbe down Mincha Ma'ariv upstairs, and the Bochum stood, half of the shul and the other half was empty. The Rebbe was there, and you would look at the Rebbe. I remember looking, after you were in Yechidus, you would look at the Rebbe. What was going to your mind? This is my Rebbe. I see do noch zendlicher tausender Menschen, but this is my Rebbe. You feel that way. It doesn't take away from others, but that's the iskasher that's supposed to feel. But it has to be not in the form of maki, because I think it sounds you could touch, you have to in Chassidus up reingucken in them, whether these two inyonim could fall under the category of maki v'akore, maki v'arochik, because we have to connect it somehow to the Posi Legani and the os of this year somehow. So there's a maki v'akore and maki v'arochik that the Rebbe speaks in the Frierdiker Rebbe in Os Tezayin, and the Rebbe in the Bamborer from that Sif speaks about it. But it could be that the fact that you're a member of the Klal, that's Makiv HaRochik. The Makiv HaKorev is something that's engaged to you. But we have to take it out of the level of Makiv. It has to become Pnimi. Because when it's a Makiv, it means it's a feeling. But a feeling that's not real. Like the Gemara says, in the Gei Amunah, there is the same thing. You could have Amunah b'derech Makiv. Chassidus, we learned, the Maim Beratot Tetzaveh talks about it, that there is the Inyan that you could have a munne b'derech makiv. Gamva apu machtar terachmon ekari. When a Gandalf goes to steal, he breaks into someone's house. He's davening to the Eibush that he should help him. This guy sounds a little like Meshugya. Does he believe in the Eibush? Does he not believe in the Eibush? If he believes in the Eibush, how's he stealing? And if he doesn't believe, how's he davening to him? And he obviously believes. Boharai is davening to him, and he doesn't think that the Eibush is someplace in Rakia Ashvi. He's davening very quietly. He doesn't want anyone to hear. So he davens quiet. So he believes the Eibush is standing right next to him. And he's stealing. How do you do that? So it says it's a munde b'derech makif. It means he believes, but it's very vague, not negei l'maisa b'peil. If this same Ganef would see a policeman coming, he would stop stealing, because he knows that the handcuffs are real and the jail is real, and that will happen. But the Eibush, as much as a munde, but the l'maisa doesn't affect. So we can have the Makiv HaKorev and Makiv HaRochik, but it has to become more in a level of Pnimi. It should be real. And this brings me into another word of what the Rebbe said in one of the Verbringers of Yuchvat. Yuchvat Tovshin Chov Hei. The Rebbe then told the Verbringen that was within Mechol der Alter. Probably everyone knows the story, but I'll repeat it anyway. The Rebbe said then that he got the Gilyonis, or the manuscripts of Harav Perlov. He called him by his name. He was a Rav in Australia. He was from the Talmidim in Lubavitch, in Shebe Lubavitch, by the Rebbe Rashab. And he wrote Zichreines. Later it came out in the Sefer Lekutei Sipurim. And there the Rebbe quoted his story that he writes. That once Michal der Alter was a mashpia in Lubavitch, in Timchet Mimim. He was a real Chassidish Reed, just to describe what kind of person Michal der Alter was, that when he was not able to give a shir in Chassidus anymore, he got old. So in the finance department, they wanted to fire him. And the Rebbe Rashab said, don't fire him. Just for the Bochum to see him and see how he davens, it's worth the geld, it's worth the money. So the Michal der Alter was verbringing, and he said like a story, a moshel. There was a yishuv. A yishuv was like a village, and they were very posh the people that were there. They didn't even know how to read, couldn't understand Lashon Kodesh. They hired a Malamed for their children. The Malamed himself was Yishgevem Stam King Grace Gun, but he was able to teach his children, able to read Hebrew. If they ever got any letters that was written in Lashon Kodesh, they couldn't read it. They would ask him to read it. So once one of the Yeshuvnik, as we called them, the farmers, the villager, got a letter and couldn't read it. He came to the Malamed, asked the Malamed to read it. And Malamed starts reading it. And as he's reading it, he's reading that this person's father died, passed away. He fainted. And Michal der Alter asked the Shaila, you don't understand. The Malamed saw it Kleirischen. He read it from the letter. The other guy only heard it secondhand. So why did he faint, not him? The guy who saw it first. He should really have fainted. And the Rebbe and the Michal der Alter answered, weil das ist sein Tate. And the Rebbe came out of the Yeroi here that what we have to know is, this is mein Tate. That whatever we're talking about, all the inyanim of his kasher, it has to come down the pale. It means it has to be, I have to feel, das ist mein Tate, das bin ich. Months later, after this Verbrenger Yitzvat, many times in the Verbringers, the Rebbe would mention, wo mir hat gerät, am darf gedenken, as mein Tate. And that the Rebbe said, Yitzvat, Tovshin Chavhei, told the story. So what it means, the bottom line is, it means whatever we talk about, not we, we don't talk, we're all talking together. What's the Verbrenger? Somebody has to get up and speak. You really have to talk to yourself. But if you talk to yourself, you go to Amshagoyim, so you got to have other people listening. But you're trying to bring the Rebbe Rashab himself, which the Rebbe said a few times, used to say sometimes by Fabrenga, Yirotzen sheyifalu advorim bi ubeashemim. But what it means is that all these nyonim have to be real to us. We have to bring it into our head. It has to be real, and it has to come to Maisa B'Peil. It's not enough just we're skashres from kloli from proti skashres. That's not good enough. It has to come down to Maisa B'Peil. The famous. Talking about Milsa the B'dichas and the famous joke. Everyone knows this joke, but it's once a rabbi was hired in the Shul, and he got up for Shabbos, and he spoke about the mitzvah of tefillin, and the president comes after Shabbos. This is not for this people. Don't talk about this. Okay. Next Shabbos he spoke about Shabbos. So he came again to him. This is next week. I spoke about tzitzis. So he says to him, tell me, what should I talk about? What do you mean? Talk about Yiddishkeit. We could talk about these kashrus. But it has to come down to Maisa B'Peil. What's the Maisa B'Peil? So the Maisa B'Peil obviously is, first and foremost thing is, to be frumen and do Torah mitzvahs, it's obvious, that's not to talk about, that has to do with his kasher, that has to do with the Eibishter himself, but his kasher to the Rebbe, learning the Rebbe's Torah, learning Kochen Sachen the Rebbe's Torah, in the Rebbe's Maimorim, the Rebbe's Siches, in the Rishimes, in the Igris, the greatest is kashrus is when you learn the Rebbe's Torah. The famous word that, again, everybody knows, I'm not saying anything new, it's all no chidushim. It's all chazering over by Chassidish Fabrengen, things that we know. The Rebbe Rashab, before he passed away, before he was in Stalik, said, Ich gehe in Himmel, die Ksovim lazechaich, I'm going to heaven, and my Ksovim, my manuscripts are leaving to you. And the Rebbe asked the Shaila, what does that mean? What anybody thought he's going to take his manuscripts with him? What he meant to say is, Ich gehe in Himmel, I'm going to heaven. But Mela, you might think that I'm disconnecting myself from you, so I'm telling you not. The Ksovim lo zechayich. So we have the Ksovim, when we have the Rebbe's Torah, we're connected to the Torah. Just like by the Eibush that it says that Anechi is Rosh Tevis, Anon Nafshi Ksovis Yehovis. Poshet in Gemara is not what it says in Chassidus. Poshet is, I myself gave it, I myself wrote it. But Chassidus teaches, I myself gave myself in, I wrote myself into the Torah. And Torah is Chochmas Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Hu Chochmas Echad. And B'meila you have the Eibishter when you learn Torah. Tzadikim Deima Lebeiram. You have to learn the Rebbe's Torah. And you have to understand, besides all the other benefits that you get from learning, and I'm speaking specifically of Likutei Sichos because I have a specific small shaykhus to it, that Likutei Sichos, when you learn it, you get all kinds of side benefits. If you learn and find good Likutei Sichos, you become a Gaon and Nigla. You become a Maskal in Chassidus. you become, your outlook on life is completely different. There are so many questions that are asked by people in Ashkof and things like that, that's answered in Likkutei Sichos. I once went to Eretz Yisrael, I was invited to be a speaker, they gave out a certain Likkutei Sichos. So on the way I met on the plane sitting next to a Gerer Ingeman, a Gerer person, a finer Ingeman. So he tells me that Til Chazai Oder every day he would come to 770. Every day to davening, Mincher, Ma'ir, sometimes twice, to look at the Rebbe. So I said, why? He says, I never wrote to the Rebbe. I didn't become a Lubavitcher Chassid. But I did that as Akoras HaTev. I said, what was your Akoras HaTev for? So he tells me, when I was a bocher, I started getting certain machshavas, veikis in the munah, and I couldn't get an answer, and it bothered me. He got married, and it still bothered. And he says, it looked to me like I'm going to go down all the way. I was one day sitting in Shul, between Mincha Ma'ariv, his for him on the table. I picked up a sefer. What was it? Likkutei Sichos with Lubavitcher Rebbe. So I opened it. Punkti was talking about a subject that bothered me the most. I never saw such an explanation that answers that question. So I started looking more. And that changed my life. And as Akoras HaTevi said, I come to 770 to look at the Rebbe as thanking him for what he did. That's what this is. This is the story. He told it to me himself. That's when you yourself, to learn what the Rebbe asked us to learn. Chitas and Rambam, that's specially negaya to Yud Shvat, because Yud Shvat, the first maimer, the maimer is Bossi Lagani. The first maimer that the Rebbe said starts with the word Bossi. The word Bossi is a remes for all four, Chumash, Tilum, Tanya, Rambam. Beis is Breishis, the beginning of Chumash. Aleph, Ashrei Ish, is Tilim. The Tov is Tanya, and the Aleph in the Yud is Yeseda is Vamud HaChochmes. So the word Bossi contains all the things. That is the real expression of a person's iskashras. And the same thing with going outside to be makarab others, doing mivtzoyim. And if you do it mitanemes, you'll be matzliach. I have to tell you a story. I told this other times, but it's something that I witnessed. Tzach, a few years, had a program in the Chofs that Sundays they used to send people to the armories. They used to have this soldiers would get together, and they were able to have an hour of service. So they would send to the different armories 2 people. So one of the armories, actually the armory that's not far from here, in Bedford. So we used to go there. We used to have about 50, 60 soldiers every Sunday. I went together with Mr. Fisher. There used to be a person called Mr. Fisher. He used to stand always in back of the Rebbe, those that remember. So I went with him, and the Seder was one would lead the services in front, and the other one in the back would try to get the people to put on film. And I'm standing in the front, 50 soldiers sitting there, now watching what's happening. The guy, he's in the back. I saw him walk over to the last soldier there, and I didn't hear, but I knew he was asking him to put on film. The guy said no. Now, you know, if the first guy says no, the second guy will say no. That's how it goes. They usually, and the second guy said no, and the third guy said no. Then I see he walks away, comes back, and whispers something to the first guy's ear. At least I couldn't hear. All of a sudden, the guy says, yeah. And he stuck out his hand, he put on, and the second guy put on, I don't know how many he managed in that hour to put on. On the way back in the car, I asked him, what did you tell him that made him put on film? So he said, I'll tell you. There's a sikha from the Rebbe, from Tovshin Yud Aleph or Yud Beis, where the Rebbe tells somebody that you should go put on film. Actually, I think there was a ship coming from someplace that was docking someplace. Anyway, he said, go to put on film with the people there. And tell them, if they don't want to put on film, this is what you should tell them. Tell them, I said, do a Yid in Brooklyn. There's a Yid in Brooklyn that speaks English with an accent. I think he said, I remember correct, doesn't even know how to drive a car. And he asked you to put on film. So this Mr. Fisher had those few lines typed up in Yiddish. And he says he walked over to the guy in the ear and he whispered him in Yiddish these words. And he stuck on his hand. I said, now will you put on film? He said, sure. And he put on film. Because if you do it with an emes, it works. And that is our iskashus to the Rebbe. And we have to remember that our iskashus to the Rebbe has an effect on the whole world. There's a ripple effect. What happens to us is important, how it will affect others. Not only begashmis, they look at us. Beruchnius. Well, there used to come out in Lubavitch a magazine called Ha'och. It was for children, written by Rosenblum. They say sometimes that Rebbe Rashab would be Magiyat, I don't know. So in this Ha'och, I remember my Zayda read me the story, told me the story before. Now they have copies of it, where it says a story, there was a big convention of Yetzer Horis. Where was the convention? Obviously in Berlin, because this went out in those years when the Maskilim. Why did the Rebbe Rashab start this magazine? Because of the Maskilim. So for children, they would give their literature. So he said, we should give our literature. So there the story is there was a big asife of Yetzer Horis in Berlin. Who was the MC? Was the biggest Yetzer Hora, the fattest one, the Yetzer Hora from Berlin. And the job was to give a report of their accomplishments. And he got up and he gave a report. He got this guy to Shmatzach, and got this guy to stop keeping Shabbos. A report was gegangen. Next speaker was somebody, also gave a report, but not so much, but also a ganz fine report. And the third guy less, till it came to the last speaker. The last speaker was the Yitzhara from Lubavitch. The Yitzhara gets up, a kliniker, a darinker, this come. He starts talking, so I'm sorry, I have nothing to say. I didn't accomplish anything. But they tell him nothing. Well, once a bocher was davening in the middle, I threw a machshavah in, a few things, small things like that. But I feel bad, that's all I have to say. Gets up the MC, and the MC says, you don't have to feel bad. It's because of what you did that little bit, that's why we were able to accomplish what we did. Because everything depends on Lubavitch. If the Lubavitch did that, then that's what it goes on. That's for the negative side. We could imagine it the good side. If we do the right thing, and we have the real iskashas, the Welt will have more iskashas than the Rebbe, and they will also do what we're supposed to do, because it has an effect. Similar story, the Rebbe told us that the Frierdiker Rebbe once told the story with the Beis HaLevi. A Litvish story, but the Rebbe told the story that he used to have a shir with 2 big lomdim every day. And one day the Askonim in the city came to him that there's a very important thing that you have to do. You have to come now. He said, I can't stop the shir. And he didn't want to stop it till afterwards. Later he asked him, why didn't you want to stop it? So he said, if I stop my shir with them, the pharmacist's son is going to convert. I said, what do you mean? He says there are different levels in town. Our level of learning is the top level of the Geinim. Under them is a level of Lomdim, not so big. Under them is a level of Gemara Rashi Tosfos, under just learning Gemara, under less. The lowest guy in town is the pharmacist's son. His ganze Yiddishkeit besteht in them, was der Schmatzach nicht. Nothing more. If I go down a level, the next is going down a level, and next one. But the last guy will also go down a level. And what will happen? Because his level of Yiddishkeit is a Schmatzach nicht. In other words, there is a ripple effect that happens that depends on us. So we have to remember the big schus we have, Ashreinu Matev Chalkeinu, we have the big schus that we're Rebbe's Chassidim and we're able to do what the Rebbe wants. That's the biggest schus. But it's together with an achrayas that we have to do it. And we have to fulfill it. And we know that it doesn't matter. It's after Gimel Tammuz, the Rebbe's Nesiyas, we see with Tachlis Hashlemus, it goes on and on. With you see all the Hashpos. What we see, a door that we have in Lubavitch, that you have Bochrim in Geleit, which are Ibirigem zum Rebbe, Azevi sie gewähnt in the Chofs, and more than that, and that's the biggest meifas from the Rebbe. And this is going to go on, not for long, till very, very soon, when there will be the Gula Shleme, and we'll see mit the Rebbe, and we'll see Be'ene Bosor, and then we'll go out of this Golas to the Binyan Beis HaMikdash B'Korev Mamish.
So thank you very much for, first of all, the crowd here, for everybody. This year, Baruch Hashem, we have standing room only. We're very proud of the outcome here, and everybody made it. So Rabbi Sachs, in one of his writings, quotes the following: if you plan for a year, then plant rice. If you plan for a decade, plant a tree. And if you plan for prosperity, educate a child. So Baruch Hashem, we are doing our utmost to help out with the project of release time, and we ask everyone who's on line and here, for those of you, the 100 people who are so here, when you get home, please log on. And I was just told that anyone who donates $7,200 will receive $1 that we have from the Rebbe. So that is sure you want to give $7,200 anyway, but why not go home with $1 from the Rebbe? Just a short story that everyone's talking about. The Rebbe's obviously saw just a little trivia case here. There was a employee of ours in camp one year. His wife was the nurse, I think. And Shabbos afternoon, Fabring, in the Shul, we Fabring. So he told me the following story. They're talking about obviously Shul here tonight, and they're talking about things about the Rebbe that we have no idea about, just a cute story. So he says that he was a young boy, 16 years old, and it came summertime, and he wanted to do something for the summer, but his parents didn't have any money to send him to a overnight camp. And he found out that in the Lubavitch Yeshiva on Ocean Parkway, there is a Menucha day camp. So he decided he's going to go see if he become a counselor or a junior counselor. So he goes to the yeshiva, and sure enough, they're looking for counselors. Who isn't looking for counselors? So they hire him as a counselor. He says, I'm not from Lubavitch. I don't have, no connection so much with Chabad, but, our job is a job. I got a job. So I went there to be a counselor. And one day they tell us that tomorrow we're going to 770 for Mincha, and the Rebbe is going to speak for us. Okay, fine. I come there, he says, and Rabbi Hecht announces after davening that the Rebbe just said that he's going to give out 3 dimes for each child. The Madrichim should come up, and you give each child the amount of dimes that the Rebbe said. And if you have leftover dimes, bring it back tomorrow to your day camp. You'll give it to your head counselors, and they'll give it back to the Americas. So he says, the next day I have this half a roll of dimes in my pocket, and I'm walking down Coney Island Avenue, and I see a station wagon. And for those of you who know what a station wagon is, from the olden days, a station wagon. And on the back it says, don't speak Lashon Hara. My teacher is the best. All the Jewish bumper stickers. And he sees a meter maid coming down ready to write a ticket. In those days, the meters were a dime. So he quickly takes out of his pocket one of these Rebbe's. He only had the Rebbe's dimes. So he takes it and he puts it into the meter and he turns the meter. And the meter maid says to you, excuse me, is that your car? He says, no, what do you think? I'm walking down, giving everybody dimes? Of course it's my car. She's okay, and she walks away. As she's walking away, a guy comes running, and he says, oh, Mama saved me. Your mama saved me for a ticket. I mean, let me at least give you back your dime. I said, I'm sorry, it's not my dime. If you want to give it back, you got to go to 770 and give the Lubavitch Rebbe back his dime. It was his dime. So if they ever ask you, did the Lubavitch Rebbe pay someone's meter, you should know that it does happen. In any case, tonight we're asking those who are watching us online, and for those who are here, make sure, please, do the best you can and help release time, Mitzvah Shah. The Rebbe came into a Zal one afternoon on a Wednesday, and there were Baruchim sitting there. He turned off the lights, and he said, Chevra, it's release time. Go to release time. And just recently I heard a story about Rabbi Shanowitz. His brother came in from Russia. He just, Mamash came in that day, and a chassid, Rabbi Shanowitz, brought him over to the Rebbe to tell him that he just arrived. He just was let out of Russia, and he just came to America, and he's coming to say Shalom Aleichem to the Rebbe. And the Rebbe said, Et hein gain of mitvach shah. And the guy looked at the Rebbe, he didn't know what he's talking about. He just arrived. What are you talking about? So Chanowitz did know, and he said, yeah, Ed Gain. So the Mitzvah Show was one of the first projects that Frierdiker Rebbe started, and the Rebbe continued. And with your help, we'll continue further. We're going to close out tonight with another set of Nigunim. We want to thank our speakers. We want to thank everyone who came. We want to thank the Shul. I don't have all the names of all the thank yous that we have to give, but consider it done. Consider a thank you that you got personally. As Rabbi Shapiro just said, a Klolistic thank you and each individual thank you to everyone who came. And we'll go back to the music.
Chaim. Da 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 da. Di da 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 ya ma. Ya ma ma mo ya. Da da da. Di da 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 da. Di da 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 ya 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 ya. Oh ya 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 ya. Di da da da. Di da 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 da. Ya ma ma ya ya. Oh ya ya. Di da ya ma ma ma. Da da da. Oh ya. Di da da da. Oh da. Di da. Ah ya ma ya ya ma ma ma. Oh ya. Di da da da. Oh da. Di da da da. Oh da. Da da da. Ah ya 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 ya. Di da da da, di da. Oh yeah. Da 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 da. Di da da da. Oh yeah. Di da da da. Oh yeah. Ma ya ya ma 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 oh ya. Di da da da. Oh da. Di da da da. Oh da. Ah oh ya 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 oh ya. Yo wasleino ma tay khalkeino umanoye megoyno dai di da di da 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 ai di da mai di da mai di da da dai da 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 ai da 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 dai da da di da da boy da 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 la da 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 ai la da 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 ai da da di da da la da 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 ha ya hey di da 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 di da ya 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 ma 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 di da ai da 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 di da 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 am da da la la di oh ya hey ya da 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 di da ya da 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 di da ya da 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 di da 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 di da 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 ya ya di da da ya da 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 mo da 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 ya da 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 ai da 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 ai da da di da 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 ai di da da ai di di da di di da 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 ai di di da ai di di da ai di di da da ai di di da 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 di di da 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 ai di di da ai di di da ai di di da 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 boy da 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 hi da 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 hi da 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 hi da 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 la di da da hey hi di da 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 hi ya 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 da ya da da di da di da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 di do ho ya da 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 hi da 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 ya da ya da da di da hi da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 hi da 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 ya hi da da oh hi da 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 ya hi 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 ya da 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 ya hey da ya ho ya ho yo yo ya da 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 ya ho ya da 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 oh la da 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 ai da 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 la da la la ya da 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 la da da la 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 da 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 ai da da la 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 ya da da la 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 ya da 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 ya da ai da da la 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 ya hey da 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 la 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 da da ya da ai da ai da da la la ya hai da 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 la la da ma da 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 la la da ma hey ai da la la da ma da 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 la la da ma da 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 ai da la 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 ya da la ya da da oh da la 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 ya da 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 oh da la la da na na la da 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 la la da ma da da oh ya da la la da ma da 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 la la da ma da da la l'chaim di da 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 ya da la da 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 ya da la la da ma oh ai da la la da ma da la da 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 ai da la la da ma di da da la la da da la la da ai da la 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 ya da 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 di da da la 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 ya da 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 oh da la 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 ya di da da la la da ma da la da 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 la la da ma hey ai da la la da ma da la da 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 la ya la da ma da 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 l'chaim shkoyach